do you tell people to never say no to anything, any davar toiv? How do you draw the line? What would your practical advice be?
The Rebbe is for sure shaykh to be Mashiach in our generation. And he spoke in Yiddish, he says, in ich wollt gewollt sein, seine neuse Keilav, I would love to be neuse Keilav. It says Rabbi Kiva was neuse Keilav of Bar Kochba. He says, if they would just let me come close to him, I would love to be neuse Keilav of the Rebbe. To mishamish the Rebbe like Rabbi Kiva did for...
What's the role of Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch? It's a bit of a... Everyone has heard the name, but it's a... Many don't know so much about it. What's the general goal, and what did the Rebbe have in mind? Did the Rebbe start it? Obviously, now that we're post Gimel Talmuz, post Chav Zayin Adar, where we don't have direct minus from the Rebbe and so on and so forth, an argument could be made that the Rabbonim have to take a more vocal, proactive position and make their viewpoints heard versus hearing from the Rebbe every week. In other words, the Goli leadership role of the Rebbe being the Hester, the Aseh L'Charav piece that the Rebbe set up, or system that the Rebbe set up, maybe needs to be more upfront.
Welcome everyone to the podcast Aseh L'Charav. The purpose of this podcast is to bridge the gap between Rabbonim and Mashpim and the Anash community. I am doing this with my friend Rebbe Basnin, who is the menahal of several halacha and chassidus projects.
Thank you, Levi. Baruch Hashem is a zchus that I have the exposure to many prestigious Rabbonim and Mashpiyim who are often not given a proper platform. This podcast, Aseh L'Charav, will give a voice to these Rabbonim and Mashpiyim to share their thinking, their hashkafa, chassidus, a deep dive into their backstory to help uplift the entire community.
Please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing, because that helps the algorithm bring it to more people, which changes lives and brings Mashiach.
In this latest episode of Aseh L'Charav, I had the zchus to sit down with Rabbi Zushe Winner, and we had an extremely interesting conversation. He wears many hats, from his role as a member of the Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. We went into a deep dive into what is Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, what is its role, what are its goals, and we discussed his role as a Rosh Yeshiva, as a Mechaber Svarim, about the special attention that his mother merited to get from the Rebbe, and many very fascinating Yechidusin, his father as well, his father's fascinating journey, and in addition to his hats as a Rosh Yeshiva and a Rav and a Dayan and a Mechaber Svarim, we discussed his role as a Shliach and how he's able to balance it all and in so many different arenas. Hope you enjoy. So, Yasher Kayach, thank you very much for making time. It's a big honor for Rabbi Zushe Winner to join the podcast of Aseh L'Charav. The term Rav in the title of the podcast has many different. There's various levels of interpretation, and Rabbi Winner fits into all the different categories of Rav, from the Mashpia side, from the Shliach side, from the Rav side, from the Dayan side. So, Be'ez Hashem, it's a zchus for us to hear from Rabbi Winner's perspective. So perhaps we can go back a little bit into your childhood, and the Rav can share with us a little bit about your family origins, and to understand how what helped form Rav Zushe Winner into who he is today, in terms of your parents and where you grew up.
My parents were Holocaust survivors. My mother was born in Munkach, and her family were Hasidim. My father's family, my father was actually born in Mir, Mir was a Litvish city, but in Mir there were two Chassidish shtiblach. There was a Chabad shul, and there was also a Slonimer, Lechavit Slonimer shul. My father's family were Slonimer Chassidim, and therefore he felt a connection to Chassidus. He considered himself a Chassid, and his family were Mekusharim to the Slonimer Rebbes in Europe. During the war, the Slonimer Rebbe of that time, what they called him the Junger Rebbe, was killed by the Nazis. Actually, my father was part of a group of Hasidim that were trying to rescue the Slonimer Rebbe from Poland. Then the Slonimer Rebbe was in Baranovich, was then part of Poland, but he refused to go. My father was very active in that, but there was a period when there was no Slonimer Rebbe. After the war, my father came to the United States.
So your parents your father had a way to escape, and he wanted to bring the Slonim Rebbe with him?
Yes. There was the escape at the beginning of the war was to go to Vilna. That all the people who ended up in Shanghai originally left Poland to go to Vilna. Vilna, for a period of about a year, was an independent country, and both Nazi Germany and Russia didn't lay claim to it and gave the impression that it would not be attacked. And therefore, all of those people who escaped the war and ended up in Shanghai, they originally were in Vilna. They were in Vilna for about a year or so, until the opportunity opened up to go to Japan and eventually to China. So he escaped Poland to go to Vilna, and he was in Vilna for that year. And during that period, the Slonim Chassidim tried to rescue the Rebbe to bring him there, but he didn't want to leave. And in the end, he was killed on Kiddush Hashem. After the war, he was there during the Shanghai. In Shanghai, he met up with Chabad Chassidim. He also had an uncle who became a Chabad Chassid, also originally Slonim Chassid, but he became a Chabad Chassid already in Russia. In fact, he's buried near the oil, him and his wife. My father had an uncle and an aunt who were Chassidim. They came to America eventually, and they're buried actually next to the oil. So he had a connection with Chabad. After the war, we settled in Brooklyn, and we moved to an apartment, Park Place at Nostrand, and he became interested in Lubavitch Rebbe and the Moised Lubavitch Yeshiva, which is just a few blocks away. And he felt that for America, the children should go to Chassidish Yeshiva and specifically to Lubavitch. And he told some of his friends and neighbors that you send your children to Lubavitch, wollen sie bleiben fromm. So he sent us to Lubavitch.
How did he know? I mean, Lubavitch and Crown Heights was one of even Chassidish Rebbes. There was Bobov, and there was other. Wasn't Crown Heights pretty popular at that time? Or?
Yes. First of all, my father's Havara was Borochato. My mother Burichato. Munkach is Burichato. Slonim Mir and Slonim is Borochata. That's first of all. Second of all, it was known that the Lubavitch is a Mesidus Nefesh in Russia. The only people who remained from Kamat, certainly as a group, was Lubavitch. In fact, the Russian army first came to Baranovich, where the Slonim Rebbe was, and so the German troops did not come to that part of Poland. As you know, there was an agreement between Stalin and Hitler to split Poland. So it was Russian troops that came over there. And the Hasidim arranged that a Russian officer who was a Yid and spoke Yiddish should meet the Slonim Rebbe at the time as the Junger Rebbe. And because the younger Rebbe wanted to know
Why
now
was he
that
called the younger Rebbe? Sorry to interrupt. What was the younger Rebbe?
the Slonim Rebbe was called the younger Rebbe.
Why was
He was a young man. He was probably in his 20s.
Oh, really
He was a
interesting.
big Ovid Hashem. His father was Nifter young, and he took over. And when the Russian troops came to Baranovich, where he was, so the understanding was now Russia, it's going to become part of Russia. That part of Poland is going to become part of Russia. So he wanted to know what's going on in Russia. So he asked the Chassidim, can you find me a Russian officer who speaks Yiddish? For some of the soldiers, there's someone who speaks Yiddish. And they found him an officer who was ready to speak to the Slonim Rebbe. And asked him, what's going on in Yiddishkeit in Russia, in the Soviet Union? He says, "Zagonish geblieben." He says, "Mamish nobody." No, Tzadod Lubavitch Chassidim. Tzadod Lubavitch Chassidim. They're the only ones that are still actively frum. And Slonim Rebbe said, "I Lubavitch." That's the quote the Slonim Chassidim are saying. He said, "I Lubavitch." I don't know if my father was aware of that at the time, but he certainly felt a connection with Lubavitch. He was by Yechidus. He was actually the first honoree of Olei Torah. Olei Torah was just a small cheder. It was in a small two-story building, and he
Holy
actually
Torah started already in the Yuds? Was that? I thought it was like
yeah,
more
in the
obvious.
late Yuds,
Okay,
the
interesting.
late Yuds. I don't know exactly when, and he sent me there. Actually, I started in Lubavitch Yeshiva first grade. In those times, there was no pre-Winner in kindergarten. You started straight your first grade and learned Ivra. And then he had a sense of old school cheder, and had a connection with some of the people of Olitera. And he sent me to Olitera for 2 years. Then he apparently wanted English, I guess. And he sent me back to the Lubavitch Yeshiva. But in Beshita, he felt that it's important for the children to connect it to Chasidus. He learned in the Mir Yeshiva for several years. In fact, there's a letter of recommendation from Rebbe Lezer Finkel, the first Rebbe Lezer Finkel, Mir, that he learned a few years in the Mir Yeshiva. He also learned the Slonim had a yeshiva in Baranovich. He learned over there.
He
So
daven loud like the Slonimmers.
no,
When I lived in Muncie, I
The
used to daven.
Stalin this is the Stalin that daven loud. The Slonim don't daven loud.
Oh, is there a merger between Slonim?
No. It's
Okay,
two
no,
two
no
different
connection. Excuse my
two different
ignorance. Okay.
Chasidus, and it's two different shittas.
Unfortunately, in Lubavitch, our knowledge is not as we know only about Lubavitch, so we need to be more
Well,
educated.
first of all, maybe we should broaden our now
Horizons.
knowing is a gleiche Sach, to know. And verkehrt, I found since I had this Slonimer background, and originally we lived in Crown Heights. After my father was niftar, I was 10 years old. The We moved to Borough Park, so I got to know different people, and I had interesting debates with neighbors who were yeshiva bacher. But now, especially when I was a yeshiva bacher, 16, 17, 18 years old, and I was learning in Bedford and then in Ocean Parkway. So I had debates, and they were saying, why Chabad Chassidus? So I remember someone was telling me, Mesilas Yesharim, that's what it's all about. So I got a Mesilas Yesharim, and I read through the whole Mesilas Yesharim. And I said, you learn Mesilas Yesharim, it's about shleimus. It's about your own shleimus. So it's not about so much about emphasis of Avodas Hashem and the Bittul and so on. Because Taka wanted to know why Taka Chabad. And then he says, oh, you have to learn Derech Hashem. That's really Ramchal in its depth. So I got a Derech Hashem. I read through Derech Hashem. And I compared Derech Hashem with Tanya. So, I mean, the oimik is much clearer in Tanya. So, so I was exposed to a lot of things. There was different Chassidus. There was a guys telling me to learn Bnei Yisachar and all that stuff. So I was exposed, and I think I do have an appreciation of different svarim and different shittas, but Chabad is Chabad. It's davar miyuchad in depth, and Chabad Alter Rebbe is, so it's a different moichin. It's a
Was there
different.
anything in those Svarim that you felt that you saw that maybe you didn't see in Tanya that gave you an interesting perspective?
Actually, not really. I mean, Bechlal, it's an old word. I mean, it's some of the Musas from, they speak directly, giving you Musar, but Mesil Zisharm is more about Shleimus. It's not even giving Musar so much, to tell you the Musar. It's more about for a person to be a Muslim, like 15 steps to Shleimus. That's in the Kudah of Mesil Zisharm, if you're familiar. But yeah, so so even though I was talking to Schanech in Temchet in Lubavitch, and I knew of no other chinuch, my father sent me to Lubavitch. I was 10 when he was nifter. Actually, I don't know if this is the function of this interview, but I had an older brother, Alav Shalom, who was 12 when my father was nifter, and he turned bar mitzvah, was still in the middle of the year. And a letter came from the Slonim Yeshiva, who by this time the Slonim rebuilt in Eretz Yisrael. They chose a Rebbe who was a descendant of the original Slonim Rebbe of the Yisoid Havodah, who was in Israel. The descendant from the line of the Rebbes, who were the Slonim Rebbes that were in Europe. So there was no descendant left, because they killed the Slonim, the younger Rebbe and his children, his whole family. And there was no Slonim Rebbe, but they rebuilt again in the 50s. They chose a descendant of the Yisoid Havodah, and they had a shaykhs. My father donated money to print Svarim, Yisoid Havodah, Teres Avos, and he had a shaykhs to Slonim in Eretz Yisrael by this time. He also had a closer shaykhs to the Rebbe. He was by Yechidus. He was a businessman, and he considered himself a chassid. The Rebbe told him he has to learn at least 2 hours a day, and it was very hard for him because he is a Holocaust survivor. He came here in the late 40s, and he was very smart. He was doing well in business, got into real estate, but he was managing everything himself. So he was very busy, and he had to tear himself away to learn 2 hours a day. He would lock himself up in his study slash office slash home
2 hours
office.
bevasachas. What was the hira?
I don't know. There was 2 hours. It
Two
was two
hours. Okay.
hours. In fact, once they were supposed to go into Yechidus, my father didn't make it, and my mother was there. So the Rebbe asked her, the man learned Tzvei Shah. So the man learned
Yeah.
Tzvei Shah. So she said, I learned. And it's true. He used to lock himself in his room at night. You could see, and no one would disturb him. So the Rebbe said Tzvei Shah. She didn't answer. She doesn't look at the watch. He knows he learns Tzvei Shah, but it was clearly he learned. So the Rebbe said Tzvei Shah, which is not so PC today for a Rebbe, someone to tell a wife that the wife should be kilu into this. But the Rebbe said to her Tzvei
It's
Shah.
her. She gets a chelik of the schar. It's to
Yeah,
help
yeah,
her man.
yeah.
What was the letter from Eretz Yisrael for your older brother?
It was a letter from the Eretz Yisrael. It was a letter to her, the Almona, that apparently we sent them. Maybe we sent them an invitation, but I don't think so. They found out about the bar mitzvah. They sent her since he's turning bar mitzvah, and he is a descendant of a mishpacha, several deities of Slonim Chassidim. So there, and your husband was a supporter, and this is his son. They're inviting him to come to Yerushalayim to learn the Slonim Yeshiva. Some had already a Chashav Yeshiva, it's still a big yeshiva. And they want him to come there, and they'll take care of him. They're inviting him to come. So she took that letter, and she said, the kid's 13 years old. She didn't know what to do. So she had Yechidus, and she brought the letter to the Rebbe, and she said to the Rebbe, "This is an invitation." She doesn't know what to do, and she wants the Rebbe to tell her what she should do. She didn't want to make this decision herself. So the Rebbe read the letter, and he says, "What do you? What do you?" He says, "Me. I would like my kids to be near me." So he said, "Leave the kids over here." So they were there. We were learning about Yeshiva.
She
And
consulted with the Rebbe. She was close with the Rebbe with these types of questions. The Rebbe was her go-to.
oh, she was very close with the Rebbe. The Rebbe was makar of her. As a kid, I remember I was yechidus with the Rebbe. I mean, with my mother and the kids were there. So I was watching. So I'm in Lubavitch. I'm already a bach in Lubavitch Yeshiva, and we knew that we saw the Rebbe. We came to different events to 770. Um, so I'm in Yechidus over there, and I'm standing by the window, closer to the window, and the Rebbe was in his seat, and then there was a chair in front of the Rebbe, and he asked my mother to sit down, and she sat. She didn't have this chinuch of I have to stand, so she sat, and she was an almona, it's a bracha, Freud, and she had a handkerchief in her hand, and she asked the Rebbe about this. My father had a real estate business. He owned a few smaller apartment houses, and everything fell on her head, and she really wasn't sure how to handle it, and different issues. And she would ask the Rebbe for this and that, everything, every small or big thing she would ask the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave her time. So I remember that Rabbi Groner, whose job is to guard the Rebbe's schedule. So he would, if someone would be sitting there longer than Rabbi Groner thought was necessary, he would come into the room and tap the person on the shoulder and tell them, the time is
Was it
up.
after a certain period of time? There was like a time
I
limit?
don't know. He had his
Okay.
rule, but that was
Okay.
that was his job, to take care of the Rebbe's schedule by Yechidus, and he would tell the person, there's a lot of people behind you, and you're taking too much time. So he's watching my mother. I was talking to the Rebbe, and as a kid, I'm watching. Must have been before my mitzvah. I'm standing by the window and watching my mother talk to the Rebbe talk to my mother, and he's coming in, Rabbi Groner, step by step to tell my mother, she's taking a lot of time. And the Rebbe made a motion like this with his hand to Rabbi Groner, to give her time. And so he went out to the room. He didn't approach my mother. My mother didn't notice him. But the Rebbe went like this. That I noticed because I'm standing and watching all of them. And he came in again, and he gave him the Rebbe was listening attentively to her. She felt that because she consulted the Rebbe about her children, if they should go to Slonim, and he said, they could stay here. So they stayed in Lubavitch. She felt that the Rebbe was Makarver. She was her connection to Rebbe actually was from the time we moved to Crown Heights. She had a few rechidus in with the Rebbe. And Munkach, there was Amunas Sadikim was very strong. Her father was a chassid. I understand that he was not so much a makusha to Munkach. His family were Tzanzich Sidim, Stropkov, which was in Sanskrit. His origin is not from Munkach. He married a Munkach woman, so that's how he ended up in Munkach. But there were Tzanzer, starke Mukashem Tzanzer.
What were the Yechidison that your mother had with the Rebbe earlier?
When we moved to Crown Heights, originally we had lived in Williamsburg. So I was born after married. My father was already a businessman, and he bought a house in Williamsburg. And after a while, he sold the house in Williamsburg, apparently because he wanted to invest this money in real estate. When he started buying the building, or one building, another building. So he sold a house in Williamsburg, a townhouse, 146 U Street, and we moved to Park Place, an apartment. Williamsburg was a Jewish neighborhood and a Hasidic neighborhood. And we're in the center, in the heart of Williamsburg. Williamsburg was not what it's today. Williamsburg had a young Israel of Williamsburg. Torah Vadas was in Williamsburg. It was a Jewish neighborhood. You could say what's today Flatbush. It had Chassidish shtiblach. But before the war, it was a frum neighborhood for all types of frum people. That's why the Chassidim moved there. Satmar moved there because it had more a Jewish infrastructure. But at that time, you're talking about the early 50s, it was not a Chassidish center, and it was not necessarily Chassidim that lived there. And so my mother, who was from Munkach, after the war, she's finally in a Jewish neighborhood, so she liked it very much. My father chose to move to Park Place. That's where there was an apartment available, a big apartment in that house. It's like a 4-story or 5-story building, apartment house, very large apartments. So he moved over there. There were 1 or 2 Jews, maybe who lived in those apartments from a Yidden. So we moved over there. So she's walking on the street over there. There's not very many from people. Bobov was there, but the Bobov Chassidim were not living near us. There was maybe one Bobov family later on moved into our building. So she was taking probably me in a carriage for a walk, and she came to Eastern Parkway. From Park Place to Eastern Parkway is a few blocks, and she was going on Eastern Parkway. She sees some Chassidish bacher, and she says, "Where are you from?" She says, "Well, Lubavitch Chassidim." And Lubavitch Rebbe is a block or 2 down. So she says, "I want to speak to the Lubavitch Rebbe." They said she came from a Chassidish house, so the Rebbe is the. If you have a question, you want advice, you ask your Rebbe. So she wants to go to the Rebbe. So they tell her, "You go to 770 Eastern Park." She goes to 770 Park. She says she thinks it was Rabbi Groner as a bacher then, before his wedding, and she says, "I want to talk to the Rebbe. I need his advice." She says, "Can I go in?" He says, "No, it doesn't work that way. You have to make an appointment. In a few weeks, you'll get an appointment that you can go in." This is the Yuds. So she made an appointment, and apparently she didn't tell my father. Maybe she did, I don't know. But she had a question that she asked the Rebbe about my father's decision to move from Williamsburg to Crown Heights, especially Park Place. So she met the Rebbe, and she says she's very upset because she lived in Williamsburg and the streets were Jewish and frum. And she's now in Park Place. Park Place at that time was there were Jews there. It was a white Jewish neighborhood mostly, but not from. It was not a religious block in the whole area. And so she said, she would like to go back. And she asked, "What does Rebbe think?" And instead, she told him, "My father wanted to stay over here." So the Rebbe said to her, "Tzuri gate finished. You don't go back. Tzuri gate finished. You're saying that there's no Yidden around you, so Adrabah. Why don't you speak to the landlord, make arrangements with him, and bring Jewish people to move?" It says on this side of Crown Heights, there's Shtiblach, and people are moving in, so maybe they should move also to that side of Crown Heights, the other side of Eastern Park, where Park Places. And so that's what he did. He met the landlord. He says, "Listen, if there's an empty, let me know. I'll get you a frum tenant." And he put up signs in the different shuls on the other side, Crown Heights, that he has apartments available. In the end, those 3 apartment houses, there was a 3 or 4 apartment houses adjacent to each other, belonging to the same landlord, and he filled them up with frum Yidden. Some of the Lubavitcher families there was the Pinsons and Wilhelm, Weingarten, but also not Lubavitchers. There was Satmar families there, Baba families there, some American Jewish families there. It was Kalaminim, and the apartment house became full with frum Yidden. So she felt, this is a Rebbe. And Munkach also, they knew about the Lubavitch Rebbe, about his Mesiras Nefesh. So that's how her shaykhus to the Rebbe was.
So it continued,
It continues
for
after my
decades.
father was,
Meaning, whenever
like all the years.
she wrote letters, or was always by Yechidus, or she.
She later on wrote letters, but there was many yechidus that she had. She was about 70. She had Yena Machla, and she was there's a number of treatments you have to have, and after I don't remember the number. Well, let's say it had to be 9 or 10, and after the 6th and 7th treatment, she was very weak and she couldn't handle it. And she didn't want to take anymore. So when the Rebbe was giving out dollars or giving out a sefer, an event that the Rebbe was giving out things, she came to the Rebbe and she says, "I don't." They tell me to take more treatments. I don't want to take more treatments. So the Rebbe says, "Don't." He agreed that not should take treatments. It's going to be good. Don't worry. And she took a type treatment. She lived another 16 years. She passed away. She was 84, 85. So she felt that the Rebbe she had a listening ear by the Rebbe, and
So when
my
your mother.
my father also had, as I said, my father was honored by all the Torah. He was a big Baal Tzedakah. He was from then there was starting already. He was Nifter, was Chav Bey, 62. So he was from the Holocaust survivors who already started being successful financially. But actually his Levaya, he was Nifter Yutas Kislev. His Levaya was Chav Av. I remember the Rebbe coming out to his Levaya, which was not uncommon. It was not uncommon. The Rebbe came out to Levayas when I was a Bach in 770. If Levaya would come by, the Rebbe would come out to Levaya. He would walk till Kingston Avenue, go back to put a cart with water in front of the door of 770, wash his hand and go in. So it was not uncommon, certainly in the Chavs. So it was arranged. Frankly, he had a few Lubavitcher friends and neighbors. So therefore, the hearse and the funeral procession passed 770, and I remember the Rebbe coming out. I was just 10 years old, so I was the Rebbe. I'm a Lubavitcher kid, learning in Rosh Yeshiva, so I remember the Rebbe coming out. But what I didn't know is a certain detail, which we found out just last year. They were going through Rabbi Groner's Yoman of Tafshechav Beis, Chafav. He used to write a Yoman. The Rebbe went to the oil, the Rebbe this or that.
This was Yutes Kislev or of?
Of Chafav.
Okay.
He was Nifter Yutes of. The Levaya was Chafav.
I saw Yarted is mamish.
Yeah, his Levaya is Chafav. And the Levaya is in front of 770. The Rebbe, so he writes in his Yoman, the Rebbe came to 770. He told Rabbi Caracas he's going to the oil. They arranged he should go to the mikveh. Therefore, the mikveh, it says there, went to the mikveh. He came back from the mikveh, and he comes out of 770 to go to the oil. And he's holding a bag in his hand. He used to hold always the bag of the tzetlach that he's taken to the oil. Askar Letzion. The Rebbe used to often answer to people, Askar Letzion. And even if he didn't answer Askar Letzion, a lot of the Yechidus tzetlach, and by Yechidus, I remember on the Yechidus that I was there, on my own personal Yechidus, the Rebbe wrote on my paper, he gave me a bracha for Yigaitu Matzasi. And he wrote on my tzettel, Yigaitu Matzasi. So I was standing very close to the desk to see he's reading my tzettel and he answers me. So I once asked Rabbi Groner, he didn't answer me b'ksav. He told me in the Yechidus, Yagaiti Matzosi, why did he write it down on a paper? The Rebbe writes, is there a file? I asked him, is there a file where the Rebbe kept on this, that he writes on a zettel at the Hira? So he says, the Rebbe took it to the Ayah. So he says, a lot of the Yechidus and Zettlach, the Rebbe took to the Ayah. So the Rebbe is coming out of Tafsha Chav Beis. He's coming out of 770 with his bag, which has letters and setlach and so on, which he's going to read on the oil. You saw videos of the Rebbe doing his avodah sakoidesh by the oil, and he comes to the out of 770, and he sees the hearse there. So he asks. Apparently, yes, Rabbi Groner, Wiener. In the zettel it says Vilner with a question mark, but it's Wiener because there was one Levayah that day. But it says Wiener, and he was familiar with my father. My father actually sent. There's a letter from the Rebbe to my father, just a few months before. That was Shnas Hashishim of the Rebbe Chav Beis. So the Rebbe my father sent in $60. And Bakash's bracha, and the Rebbe sent him. I don't know if he sent it to everybody, but there's a letter from the Rebbe to my father. Then thank you for the brachas. It's signed by the Rebbe himself, and there's also a receipt from Lishkas Chashoin. There's a special Karen, Lishkas Chashoin. It's the name of a lishka in the Beis Hamikdash. Chashoin is special for special people. Tzedakah. So that's the receipt, $60 receipt, and the Rebbe's letter. So there was a relationship between my father and the Rebbe, and so this is the Levaya. So here the Rebbe is carrying the bag to go to the oil. Generally, he didn't interrupt if he was in the middle of doing something, but over here he says to Rabbi Groner, "It's not going to take long." And he went to the car, put the bag onto the seat, and he joined the Levaya.
The Rebbe put the bag in the car, and
I put the bag in the car, and he walked the Levaya, and then the hearse left, and he went to the aisle.
wow.
Which I found very interesting. That he could have just didn't have to go, and then he had to go back into 770, and to do after Levaya, the Rebbe went back in 770. He washed his hands. He sat in 7 places.
Seven places.
Yeshiva says. I mean, I didn't see that, but Bechlal, that was the
Rebbe would do Yeshiva says 7 then.
Yeah, so that was Dan Hoga Bechlal by Levaya. That's what we knew.
Meaning you for other, not just walking the
yeah, right. After a Levaya, you're supposed to say you wash your hands as Yeshiva says. So he did that. He had to go back to 770 and come out of wash his hands, do Yeshiva says, come back into the car and go to the oil. So
the Rebbe would sit down and stand up 7 times once he went.
I don't know. I was never in there.
Okay.
He went into the Zal.
He would stop. I guess he would pause walking and 7 times.
No. He went into the Zal. I heard that he would sit seven places. I never saw it, so I can't tell you. But you could see him wash his hands outside of 770.
Put the kavod upside down,
and so he then he went into 770. I didn't. That's Bechlal by Levias. I was a 10-year-old kid, by my father's Levias. I didn't see this whole part. I just remember sitting in the car which was taking me to the Levaya. I remember the Rebbe coming out from 770 towards the hearse. So I remember he was by the Levaya, but I don't know what happened more than. But Rabbi Groner's Yaman did something.
Hey, are you looking for top talent without the crazy cost? Well, you're in good luck because I'm working advising at Talent Sam. They help companies hire amazing people from South Africa for roles like customer success, finance, operations, marketing, and sales. All and more at around 70% less than Western employee cost. They can find the right person in days with no recruitment fee, and they handle all HR, tech, and compliance. If that sounds like something you or someone you know could use, let me know and I'll connect you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the video. Hey, if you're listening right now and you've been feeling stuck, like you're running in circles or living on autopilot, I want to invite you to something different. I call it coaching out of the matrix, and it's about breaking free from the patterns, fears, and false limits that break you from living fully as the person God created you to be. My approach is holistic. We work on mindset, emotions, physical well-being, and a deeper spiritual identity so the change lasts. And here's the twist. You only pay if you're satisfied with the session, because I believe in results, not hype. If you're ready for a shift, email me at ladyholisticcoach@gmail.com and let's see what opens up for you. That's ladyholisticcoach@gmail.com. Coaching out of the matrix. Your new chapter starts right here. Enjoy the rest of the video.
Also, that Elul, my mother got a letter from the Rebbe, a Rosh Hashanah greeting. Generally, he didn't send. I don't think there were other letters, Rosh Hashanah, that she got from the Rebbe. But my belief is that she got that letter because she was an almana and she had a connection to the Rebbe. So that year, the Rebbe sent her a letter.
So as a 10-year-old Yosim, was there anything unique in the relationship between you and the Rebbe that going forward from there in terms of kiruvim?
I can, nothing special that I could say, or I could tell you. That year, no, I don't know if it's that year. It could be a different year, probably a different year. My mother used to go into Yechidus once a year. And as I said before, she would ask the Rebbe different questions. There was a famous Yechidus that she had with the Rebbe that they say about a woman who her hands started getting a rash, a nasty rash. And she asked the Rebbe for bracha about her nasty rash. And the Rebbe said, maybe you changed the soap that you're using for laundry. So that was my mother.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was Taka. Then they started producing laundry with a new ingredient, and apparently that was the source of the rash. She should change it. My point is that she used to ask the Rebbe everything, and the Rebbe used to ask her a lot of interesting questions. So her Yechidus was right before the summer.
What was a birthday Yechidus she would go in, or was a
I don't know. I don't know. What was but she should go. You should go about once a year. When Yechidus was going on, and the Rebbe asked her, what's with your children that are going to camp? And she said that my older brother, he didn't get a job in camp. I probably went as a camper, but he's ready. He can't be a camper, so he doesn't have anything to do. Therefore, he's not going to camp. So she said, the Rebbe tells her that after Yechidus, she should go into the Merkaz office and tell them over there that I said that they should arrange for your son a place in the camp. So it just happened to be, this is the day before camp. It's the day before camp. Rabbi Groner was in the Merkaz office. In the Merkaz office, not Rabbi Groner, Rabbi Shem Tov. Rabbi Groner was zichud there. I mean, he was by the door always, by Yechidus. When I says Rabbi Shem Tov is there, she says, the Rebbe said, he says, okay, tomorrow the buses are leaving this time. Tell him to come. We're going to arrange something for him. So that was an interesting.
What was that? What was the impression that made on you that the got you a spot in camp? Did that connect with?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't remember it at the time. My mother told me this. I wasn't so involved. I was probably a kid. 13, 14 years old.
The Yechidus you had where the Rebbe responded, Yagaiti Yomatzosi, was there a specific question you had that the Rebbe responded?
Frankly, B'chlal, Chassidim don't like to speak about their Yechidus in. Yeah, probably about my Avodas Hashem. I don't remember specifically if there was a specific um, Vart, that I don't remember at a specific, so to say, point that this addressed, but Chassid Bachram used to ask the Rebbe, brachas and avodas Hashem, and in their personal avodah. So the Rebbe said to me, "Yogaiti mitzasi." Later on,
Sorry, go ahead.
later on, when I was already on shlichus and in yeshiva, I wrote to the Rebbe a question about. So here I am. I was then in Ocean Parkway. So I was a Maggid Shir in Ocean Parkway at the time, in Zal. And first I moved to Brighton Beach. I was a Rav in a shul. It was at that time an Ashkenaz shul in Brighton Beach. And I also, so it was not a full-time job. So it's about it was a 15-minute drive from Ocean Parkway. And my kids went to Ocean Parkway, and I was in the yeshiva bringing my kids. Rabbi Tenenbaum, the Manal of the yeshiva, sees, Rabbi Marlowe is leaving the yeshiva, and he became the Rav of Crown Heights. That was the year he became a Rav in Crown Heights. It was in the Mems. I don't remember if it was Mem Vov. I'm not sure exactly which year, Mem Hey, Mem Vov. Maybe about then. So Rabbi Zalman Shimon was nifter. They made elections, and Rabbi Marlowe became Rav. As soon as he became Rav, he stopped being a Maggid Shir in Ocean Parkway. Up to then, he was the Maggid Shir in Ocean Parkway. He had the highest shir in Mesivta. So he asked me if I would want to be there. So I said, that's perfect for me, because I had those hours from the shul, and he knew me from Caracas. He used to visit Caracas. Rabbi Tenenbaum, he did fundraising in Caracas. So that was what so that's how I ended up in Ocean Parkway, and then I moved up to the Zal. Started saying the shurim in the Zal. The Yeshiva was Rabbi Buket, who was Yeshiva for many years. And soon he stopped saying the shurim, so I said, but he's still the Rosh Yeshiva, but I started saying the highest shir in Zal and Ocean Parkway. This is then in Nun Bays, the Zal and Ocean Parkway, after the Chavzayin Oder, we moved to Crown Heights. Because the beeper was a whole story. The guys were running to Crown Heights, so it became safer and better for the yeshiva to move to Crown Heights. That's why we moved to Crown Heights. After the book was nifter, so I became, so to say, officially Rosh Yeshiva in Chayvei Torah.
This is connected to the Yagaito Matzosi?
So when I was busy, so I was quite busy, right? So Rabbi Bamzer, who's the president of the Vaad Rabbonei of Flatbush, which I became involved with, so he says to me, I want you to become a vice president. So I says, I'm busy. I have a shul, and I have a yeshiva, and I'm doing hafetza in Brighton. So he says, write to the Rebbe. Okay. He had a yachas with the Rebbe, a very close yachas with the Rebbe Bamzer. So I said, okay. I write to the Rebbe. He says, yeah. So I don't know if. So I think so. Yeah. So what am I supposed to do? The Rebbe never said no. If you have an opportunity to do more, be more. And I wrote that I'm involved in this and I'm involved in that. And he asked me to be vice president of Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. So I used to go to the meetings. Rabbi Bamzer used to ask me to come. I used to go to the meetings. Most of the rabbis in the Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch were modern Orthodox rabbis. YU graduates. That's when the yeshiva, and Flatbush was, starting to become more yeshivish. Now it's very yeshivish. It's even chassidish in Flatbush. You have chassidim already. But at that time, so for me it fitted because for my malabatim, it would fit that they have a shaykhus with these type of congregations.
So if someone comes to ask you for
So the Rebbe, so now
sorry.
at the end of that, I asked the Rebbe bracha for Hatzlach in Zman. The Rebbe spoke about Hatzlach in Zman. So the Rebbe said, this and this and this and this. How do I put it together? So I wrote that. I think it was a different letter, And the Rebbe said, "You guide to mitzvasi."
That was that mine.
That was that mine again. You guide to mitzvasi.
So if someone comes to ask you counsel as a Rav, as a Mashpia, this is a common question that I hear. And as I was preparing for the interview with you, some of your Talmidim sent in similar types of questions about balance, because you come across as not a kilu avil de mensch, but you have so much on your plate, as you mentioned, between the Rosh Yeshiva. We want to talk about the Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch and Rabbonos and Shlichus and writing. You publish many Svarim, and obviously you have a big family, mit Einiklach, v'chulu, Kanai Nahara. And here the Rebbe is giving you the message, never say no to anything. Today in the world, they teach people how, you have to know when to say no. So do you tell people to never say no to anything, any davar toiv? How do you draw the line? What would your practical advice be?
So it's a very good question. I personally think that I wouldn't be able to do it the way I did it if I was not first 7 years a Rosh Yeshiva in Caracas. After Kailo, I was offered a shlichus, a job in Caracas to be Rosh Yeshiva. They had founded a yeshiva. The Rebbe suggested to start a yeshiva gedol in Caracas, which meant they're going to send 10 bacharim on shlichus to Caracas to learn their yeshiva gedol. So there were shluchim from all the Torah, like today also we have shluchim from the yeshiva gedol, from the yeshivas in all the Torah and Morristown. There's probably 5 and 5, and these are top bacharim from these yeshivas. They're 19, 20 years old, these bacharim. And the idea was that these bacharim would have a yeshiva, would start a yeshiva in Caracas, a yeshiva gedola. So they needed Rosh Yeshiva to tell them shiurim, to be with them. You can't just send the bacharim that age to Stamazay to be alone. So Rabbi Mentlik came to me and he says to me, we would like you to be a Rosh Yeshiva in Caracas. So Rosh Yeshiva, actually I was more in Chassidus. My last year in 770, my last 2 years, I was a Khan in Chassidus. I was into Rebbe Yeld and his shiurim, and actually in Koilel, I started getting more into halacha and learning. We learned Hilchos Mikvois. I finished Hilchos Mikvois. And then the Rebbe wanted the Koilel should do the mafteches on Ayin Beis. So it ended up, and he said the Koilel should do it. That they chose me and Rabbi Yossi Hecht from Eilat. He was also in Koilel at that time. And basically it boiled down to me and him doing it ourselves. And we made a very detailed mafteach of every mimer, except for the chelik shloi nemar, was made by somebody else. But the first 2 chalakim of Ayin Beis we did, and it took a lot of haravanya, full time. We became full time working on this because the Rebbe wanted it to happen faster and faster. So. But then the koil ended, and this maftechas were ended, and I was looking for shlichus. So Rabbi Mentlik says, "How about being a Rosh Yeshiva?" Someone gave that name to Rabbi Perman, who was the shliach over there, and the Rebbe suggested there should be yeshiva gedola. He actually suggested it to the chief rabbi, Rabbi Brenner, and Rabbi Mentlik says to me. So I said, so before that, I was very much into Nigla and the Chir and the Lumdus, years and earlier years, and then so I was really into both. I loved learning. Going back to my father was very much into learning, and he very much wanted us to learn, and he hired for us tutors to learn more after hours. So my father was very much into learning. So even though I was just 10 when he was nifter, but this stayed in my head, you know, it stayed in my head as a kid that my father is learning Torah, learning Torah, learning Torah. And also the image of him in his room, learning.
It's 2 hours.
I didn't look at the watch. I didn't even know about the 2 hours. I was just 10 years old. But I do remember, and this made a very profound impression on me, that if my mother wanted something from my father, and I see her approaching his study, and she the door was a little open, and she sees him learning, she would walk away.
Wow.
She wouldn't disturb him when he was in the middle of learning. So this had a very profound effect on me in my learning.
He
So
did most of his learning at home, or it was like he did.
well, there was a share in the apartment building. After a while, it became a lot of things. There used to be a share. I think it was just once a week. And I heard from the Balabatim who by the share, if somebody was stuck on a piece of Gemara in the share, he says, your father was the one who usually figured it out. He had a good head, and he was a lamdan. He learned these big yeshivas. He was a lamdan.
So going back to the question, so how do you? What about saying no? Did Rebbe wanted you to say yes to everything? So how do you?
So going back, so I became a Rosh Yeshiva in
Correct.
there. So being a Rosh Yeshiva was full-time focus in Chassidus. I mean in Nigla. I mean you have to finish it to 20-year-old Bachrim, and some of them are top Bachrim. So I had to say a pilpul shir. So the Bachrim wanted a pilpul shir once a week. So at least once a week, I had to say a pilpul shir. And then I sat with them in the Zal most of the day. In the beginning, I used to say also shir and Chassidus, but that I didn't really have to prepare much because I already had Biel Shurim and what that was was not so easy. And I was not much older than the Bachrim. I was probably about 25. The Bachrim were 1920. And they pointed to me. So I wrote to the Rebbe, I'm not sure. I'm just 25. The Bachrim are going to be 1920. And I said, and I asked Rabbi Mental, you think so Rabbi Mental had forehand me the years, in 770 and in Newark. I was the last year of Newark, Lamed Aleph. And so he knew me. He said, I think you're right to be Rosh Yeshiva. So I wrote to the Rebbe, I'm not sure. And Romantic, I asked Romantic offered me, suggested me, and I asked him what he thinks that I am Masim. So he underlined that, and he says to me, Makabel Hatzah. So the rest is history. So going back to this thing, so I was already 7 years learning, giving shiurim with Bachram on a high level of post Morristown and Oleg Torah. So now to go to Ocean Parkway first, and then to Chayveve, so you still have to learn every day. There's no such thing as preparing old shiurim and so on. You still have to listen and learn. But it wasn't it's not from Bereshis. It's not from Bereshis. So I had the Rabbonis and doing Fatsa in Brighton Beach. So it wasn't that. So I was doing that. That is not so. I didn't have to do fundraising at the time because I had a position, and therefore then giving shurim in yeshiva in Zal in Ocean Parkway and then Chayvei. So I was already, so to say, had that experience of learning and these mesechtes. You still have to malignant and learn. You can't just get away with the same altitatus because the Talmidim ask you questions, so you have to malignant and learn it. So therefore, it was doable. Mashenkin, if you have a guy starting now to take two things, it is
Do you sometimes say no to things?
if I have sometimes say no to things, I say no to to a lot of dintayas,
A lot of dentitis.
especially the beginning of his man. So I'm a Rosh Yeshiva of many years. If it's the beginning of his man and they wanted the entire Elul or even when they're starting a new sugya, I say no because I want to taka get into the sugya.
So let's get into the Dinei Torah. I want to. So you were a Khan in Chassidus and Yeshiva, working in Ayin Beis and Koilel, and obviously you had a tremendous koch in learning Gemara as well. That was developed as a 7 years as a Rosh Yeshiva in Caracas. And then there was a transition towards halacha. Who inspired you to get involved in halacha and rabbanos? When did that happen?
So I always. I mean, I always was into halacha and learning. When I was in Ocean Parkway at Talmud, I was 17. Rabbi Bucket was the Rosh Yeshiva, and he was into the Chikiras. Chikira is mige bitter this din, is chazaka bitter this din, and so he even though his derech limit was more Polish and not gruntig, but this idea of splitting everything into a Chikira really stimulated me into this thing, and I started getting involved. As a 17-year-old, even a 16-year-old, getting Rabbi Yosef Engel's Svarim. Today they have a whole set. Then there was bought a Lekach Tev separately, a black cover. I still have it from when I bought it when I was 16, 17.
Rabbi Yosef Engel and the Migui and the Chakiras, that's more the Olam of Lumdis, not so much
Right. No,
halacha
but I
l'maisa.
just loved Chakiras.
Okay,
I
yeah.
got into Chakiras. That's that. No, he started that. Taka was a Lumdish Chakira, but this thing of Chakiras really got me interested. Also, the Rebbe has a lot of these Chakiras. So the Sikhs have Chiras. There was not that many Sikhs, Lamdish Sikhs, that were Muga at that time, but I got into Rabbi Yosef Engel. I don't know, I don't remember who told me about Rabbi Yosef Engel, but I was 16, 17 years old. I remember I got about a Lekach Tev. I found the Lekach Tev, then Sionim Latera, then Asfin Deraisa. It's different books, different set. They sold them separately, and I was really into that. And also, I was Bechlal in my approach was that Limud Torah, to be a Yid, I think this is an important thing. To me, as I said to him, my father was an inspiration that he was into Limud Torah. But to me, Limud Torah was to understand why you're a Yid and how Yiddishkeit works. So I was really interested in Nigla, and I was interested in Chassidus. From about 16, I really got into it. Even before, you have to understand Yiddishkeit. And the Rebbe was like that. There was no difference, Nigla, Nistra, and so on. But even as a young kid, I wanted to understand Chassidus, and I wanted to understand Gemara, and I wanted to understand Halacha. And this was from the beginning. I had times when I was focused more on one Nakuda than the other Nakuda, but always I felt that Limud Torah has to be broad and in all aspects of Torah. Part of that was halacha. More seriously in halacha, I started when in Caracas. Because in Caracas, I was there. There's no Rav over there, the Paskin Shilas. Shilas came my way, and I had my own Shilas and halacha. How do you do this? How do you do there?
Who was your go-to for shimush for when you had
So
shilas?
a good question. So I used to consult Rabbi Menashe Klein in Borough Park
By
because he was.
telephone or
So there's a few tshuvas in his forum to me,
okay.
right? Because I consulted him because I knew him from Borough Park. We lived nearby, and also he was the Olam Misharov that was very fond of Lubavitch and of the Rebbe particularly. So I can say I consulted him a lot.
How often would you call him? Was it like a weekly, monthly?
I didn't call him weekly, but when Shilas used to pile up, we used to travel to New York for twice a year, Pesach, usually Pesach and Tishrei. So I used to talk to him. I also, when I came to Crown Heights, I used to speak a lot to the Rebbe Shimon, Rabbi
You were in
Marlow.
Koilo, you were with Rebbe Zalman Shimon.
Yeah.
You
Rebbe
made a
Shimon.
comment to the Koilo that about your learning with Rebbe Zalman Shimon verse the Rama of Koilo Rabbonei Chabad. How was Rebbe Zalman Shimon as a teacher? He used to give shiurim in the Koilo?
No, he didn't get Shimon. He used to sit there, and younger light used to come. He used to sit over there so younger light could talk to him. But he didn't give a Seder Halimud, and he didn't really give Shimush. Kamat didn't give anybody Shimush. But, you had Shimush in the sense of Shimusha Shal Torah, to talk to him and how to look at this and how to look at that. And he used to pass Halacha Al-Mailas, come out no Shuvas from Reb Zalman Shimon and Halacha.
What was his style of learning? Were you able to talk to him in learning?
It was more practical than finding a marker. Your koilel, the Rabbonim, Rabbi Kazimov and Rabbi Raskin, they're very fundamental. With their paskin and shaila, they'll tell you a marker, they'll tell you a machloikis, verse and chapter, clear. Rabbi Zalman Shimon, it wasn't that way. He will tell you it's kosher, it's not kosher, you should be machmer, not machmer. He was not open to halachic debate. Like a lot of some of these older Rabbonim.
Why do you think that was?
I don't know. I don't know, but I think it was the way it's done today. I think is much better.
So in Crown Heights and in the Lamids, who was there to do shimush?
Rabbi Marlow was accessible also. So Rabbi Marlow was a Maggid Shir in Bedford.
I heard he taught math also.
He taught. He was my fourth grade English Rebbe.
Okay.
And he started out as a second grade Rebbe in Limudei Kodesh, and then he ended up in Mesivta, but he was always into halacha.
Who was who did he train by? Like if he said Zalman Shimon didn't do shimush, like who gave shimush to Rabbi Marlow?
I actually asked him, so he didn't want to say, but he heard of it. His Milo, he pushed heard of it in Magen Avram, Magen Avram, especially in Oyer Chaim. The strong point was Oyer Chaim, and he pushed hard of it. And Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Oyer Chaim, Taz, Magen Avram and Taz, he used to hard of it. And when he was teaching in Mesivta, I learned by him in Mesivta. He always had a Shulchan Aruch there, and by lunch he was learning. And in 770, he would be sitting and learning. People used to come to the Zalman Shimon to ask Kashayla, and myself also, especially when I was already in Koilo, and people used to go to him, and a friend of people used to go. Before they went to the Zalman Shimon, they would discuss it with Malo. It was usually in 770, and then they would go to Zalman Shimon, and they would tell him, "I'm going to go to Rabbi Zalman Shimon." And he said, "What did Zalman Shimon said?" And I had different shilas. Rabbi Zalman Shimon said one way, and I came back to Rabbi Malo, which was another discussion. But
did you go outside of Chabad to ask shilas besides Rabbi Menashe Klein? I saw a picture of you and Rabbi Vaad Yosef in Caracas.
So that he came to Caracas, and Rabbi Chadakov's shit was if a rabbi like Rabbi Vaad Yosef comes, and before him was Rabbi Goren, and we were not comfortable of being Chabad Rabbi Goren to come to the Rosh Yeshiva. No, because in the Lamids, the Rebbe spoke out against Rabbi Goren because he became a Rav Harashi, and he was Mater Mamzerim, and he did it in order to get that position. So there was some public Farbrengens where the Rebbe criticized him. So we felt, the Rebbe had Akim Nefesh from him, but we got a sharp answer from Rebbe Chadakov. Then we asked Rebbe Chadakov, the people in Caracas got upset. Rebbe Chadakov said, "What? It's none of your business. Rav Rashi from Israel comes to the shtat, you have to mechabed him, you have to ask him to say a shir. There's also Rebbe Vaad. So we were mechabed Rebbe Vaad, and so he ate in my house. There's a picture with him in the house. I don't know if there's a picture in the yeshiva. So yes, we were mechabed him. So he was a big gone, and if you ask which my main go-to person, who was Rabbi Menashe Klein. We visited also the Moshe as Bachram in Caracas, as with the yeshiva. He gave a very nice letter of support for the yeshiva. But in learning, so I felt comfortable with him. Also, you can talk to him about Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and he was very much into. In fact, when the Rebbe's Mashiach campaign came out, so I used to visit him. By then, I was already in New York a while. I continued my relationship in New York, and he spoke to him about. He says he felt the Rebbe. He says the Rebbe. He says I know the Rebbe. The Rebbe is for sure shaykh to be Mashiach in our generation. And he spoke in Yiddish. He says, "In ich wollt gewollt sein seine neue Keilav, I not Siegelost. I would love to be Noise Kalim." It says Rabbi Kiva was Noise Kalim of Bar Kochba. It says if they would just let me come close to him, I would love to be Noise Kalim of the Rebbe. To Mishamish the Rebbe like Rabbi Kiva did for Bar Kochba.
Yeah,
So I got into halacha. Then I used to every shalas that I had, I used to write down. People went to halacha. I've said to many of us, keep a notebook. You have a shaila, so look it up, write it down, and then leave the rest of the page blank. Leave the right side of the notebook blank. And then I would, then later on, you're doing a different shaila. So you see that it's addressed, or you see a tshuva, or you consult with the Rav. So I started asking different shailas to different Rabbonim, people who visited Crown Heights, Rav Ashkenazi, or Moshe Lando asked a few times questions. And keep a notebook and as you'll see, today there's a lot of malaktim. Not so long ago there was not so many malaktim, but in any case, ein adam leim dalacha elim ke nichshul ba. What says nichshul ba? Not that you failed, and you gave a wrong psak, but you actually encountered it and it stopped you. You have to think about it. So the more you think about the thing, you'll grow. I heard from Zalman Shimon, someone commented to him that this Rav, in the past, paskined one way, and now he paskins a different way. Kilu mocking the fact that this Rav changed his mind. So Reb Zalman Shimon said, "A Rav was baita meinung, meintes as learned." That means he's learning, because if he doesn't learn, he's still on default from what he learned amal, and he knows the psak did. But if a Rav who's learning, he's going to change his opinion. I mean, the Alter Rebbe, you see this, and in Gemara you have Mishnah Rishayna and Mishnah Achrayna. So it's a learning. You're asking about halacha. So someone who's into halacha, even if he had this shaila before, if he looks it over again, he may be more lenient or more machmer. Usually, the older you get, the more experience you have, you have koicha da'atei ra'adif. Why is koicha da'atei ra'adif? Because to be machmer, darf nicht sein as a greis lam. To be meko, you have to have more confidence, and the confidence comes through more learning. The more you learn, the more yediyas you have, the more shimush you have. Of course, confidence comes through shimush, but also, as you get older, the more you learn, and you see, you look at it with a broader perspective, and that gives you also confidence.
Are you going to publish some of your tshuvas from yourself, from other Rabbonim? Is that a pending project? Because you published quite a few Choshev Svarim in the Shchita and other
no,
areas.
I try to write an article printed in the Kovetz here and there. So here you're asking about my schedule. So in yeshiva, so shiurim. So I write some of my shiurim. If there's a chiddush that I want to share, I write it, and if I try to type it and send it into Kovetz, like Militarius Kovetim has a lot of. If you put a search my name in Eitzera Chachma, you'll find a lot of horrors over there. But also in the Rabbonish journals. If it's more halacha, I would send it to a Rabbonish journal. Yes, but I find, this has really hit me when I worked on Hilchas Shchita. The Rebbe strongly encouraged the writing of my Sefer on Hilchas Shchita, B'yiri Halachas. And if you have to write something that's going to be printed, your learning is garandish. B'chlal, Samach Vov, it says, when you have to paskin a shaila, you misyageya more because you have to paskin a shaila l'halcha l'maisa. So you have to rethink this because the people are relying you on halacha l'maisa. So you have to really, it's nicht stam gelernt. You have to think it over. You have to make a decision. When you have to give l'tfus, there's a word in the Tzemach Tzedek. If you say something, the whole world is going to know. But if you print something, it's going to be for generations. Because thumb print, and you feel that sense. And that's why I think it's important to write. Myself, I try to push myself to write. But
How
during
often?
the...
How much time per week do you dedicate to writing?
I don't know. I should be able to give you a number. But you have to be, masuder to time for writing. It doesn't always happen. You have your schedule, itoisai biyodi to do that.
This podcast is sponsored by Koilel Aliba de Hilchasa, a brand new Koilel with the Rosh Koilel, Rav Yaakov Goldstein, Skan Rosh Koilel, Rav Menachem Rottenberg, Menal Poyel, Rav Mendel Weisfish, all active, experienced, Moida Hayra. Follows an 8-year syllabus. Every 6 months is a new topic, broken up into subtopics. Until Pesach, we're learning the halachas of Hilchas Avelus and Bikur Cholim. After Pesach, we're learning workplace halacha, Hilchas Ribis, Hilchas Baltolin, and Hilchas Yichud. It's a serious learning Gemara, Shulchan Aruch inside. 3 hours a week of Chavrusa learning. We help find you a Chavrusa, set up a Chavrusa. And then there's 2 in-depth shiurim per week, 2 live shiurim per week. And it's serious learning. Someone that has a busy schedule, 3 to 5 hours a week. Schedule a conversation with the Manal Poyel today at koilelad.com. This podcast is sponsored by Koilel Rabbonei Chabad. Koilel Rabbonei Chabad is a community of experienced Rabbonim, aspiring Rabbonim, over 100 shluchim and anash from around the world, staying fresh in sugyas of community Rabbonos, learning over 8 to 10 hours a week, Gemara, Tur, Beis Yosef, Rosh Koilel, Sgan Rosh Koilel, senior poskim, follow-up, Chavrusa placement, to be able to stay fresh in these sugyas and to learn not just shimush and practical psak, but also shimush in the room of Rabbonos. The Koilel has so far learned over the past 2 years the sugyas of Tvilas Koilim and Agalas Koilim, Hilchas Nida, and we're soon going to be starting Hilchas Mikvois, and you can join at any time. Schedule a conversation with the Rosh Koilel today at koilelrabbonechabad.org. So I only asked about a third of the shilos that I had for the Rav, so we'll definitely have to schedule a part 2, if the Rav would be willing. But I just want to briefly touch upon if I can, a big topic, which is the Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, which the Rav is not just a member of, but also has a leadership role there. What's the role of Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch? It's a bit of a, everyone has heard the name, but many don't know so much about it. What's the general goal, and what did the Rebbe have in mind? Did the Rebbe start it?
There are many answers to the Rebbe that the Rebbe gave. First of all, to Anash, who had questions, or Dinei Torah, he said, consult Vaad Rabbonei Chabad. Vaad Rabbonei Chabad, or Rabbonei Chabad, or Din Torah by Rabbonei Chabad, or Vaad Rabbonei Chabad. To the people who were involved, and I wasn't involved in the original organization of it, but the Rebbe wanted there should be Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. Rebbe Zalman Shimon was the head of Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. The hechsher of the meat was not Rebbe Zalman Shimon's name, it was Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. Gave the hechsher on the meat. That's what Zalman Shimon. It was not Bezdin of Crown Heights, it was Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. Rebbe Zalman Shimon played, so to say, two roles. He was the Bezdin, he was the Rav in 770, and the Rav who passed on Shilas in Crown Heights for Anash, and he also was the Lubavitch of Lubavitch. So he had that position. It came out that way, and apparently with the support of the Rebbe. So there was always a Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, and Chadakov was involved in it, and the Rebbe was involved in it, with the people who actually were the first Rabbonim and the Vaad, the earlier Rabbonim, which was way before my time. At a certain point in the Samachs, I was asked to first of all sit on Dintaitis, and then I was asked to become a part of the Vaad Appoel. It's already in the Samachs. And I became part of the Vaad Appoel. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is to help Anash and Chassidim and Shluchim, especially Shluchim, if they need any Rabbonish assistance. We're not Rabboni of there are Rabbonim of Kehillas. I'm a Rav in a Kehillah. A lot of them are part of Kehillas, Rabbonim of Kehillas. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is not the Rav Harashi of Lubavitch. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is an Irgun which brings together Rabboni Anash to do certain services for Anash, specifically more the Shluchim, which is under officially under Lubavitch.
So why do they focus on the Shluchim, not general Anash?
Well, everyone should have a Rav, and a local Rav or a local Bezdin that they have. I mean, the Rabbonim of Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch are Rabbonim of Kehillas. And therefore they're serving Kehillas and they're serving Balabatim with specific shilas. So the Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch was not organized; it was to bring together Rabbonim in case there's something that's not specific Kehillah focused for a specific Kehillah. Unless a specific Kehillah wants to consult with Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch to have an opinion that's more klolistic between Rabbonei and Anash. Now, when you're having a sichsuch, and there's no local bezdin or and shluchim, which could be there's no local bezdin most of the shluchim. So the Rebbe said there should be dafka Rabbonei Anash or Vaad Rabbonei Anash. He called it the Vaad to address this thing. So therefore, most of the Dintaitis are about between shluchim. If there's a sichsuch between shluchim. So as the way it was organized by the Rebbe is that it's not that it cannot be brought in the Torah. There's a shliach Rashi and he fires someone, or there's between two shluchim who bought a building, and there's a debate, who it belongs to, and so on. So that it's brought to Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. What is Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch? It organizes the best. Basically, the business is now Zabla. This is, so to say, the more democratic. People have more choices. So that's what's going on. So basically, it's not, people say, why doesn't Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch do anything about it? So we're not Balabatim of Lubavitch. If there's an issue in Lubavitch that's not Beseder, so if it's an issue of Shluchim, really Merkos should worry about it. And Merkos has to straighten it out. If Merkos wants an opinion from Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, then they would consult Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, and Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch would get their Rabbanim together and give an opinion. But it's not the role of Shlich, let's say, is not Beseder in his personal life. So the Shlich is not Beseder in his personal life, Chas v'Shalom. So who's his boss? His boss is Merkos and Yonichinach. They're the Mashaleach. So that it's their responsibility. That's also now if it's a local kehillah, so it's a local kehillah that has to take care of it. The Rabbonim of the kehillah take care of it. So therefore, people say, "Well, why doesn't Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch do anything about it?" Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is not the rov of a kehillah with responsibility. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is ma'argain things which would benefit shluchim. So therefore, we're ma'argain it in Torah. So you want it in Torah, so we're going to be ma'argain in Torah. If there's going to be an issue between the two, so maybe we may have to make a decision of how to be ma'argain in Torah. If there's going to be tinus, he wants to ma'argain it this way, that way. So then Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, the Vaad HaPoel will decide these inyani. So Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is to serve Anash who in Yonim Kloliim, not paskin a shaila that's negated to a specific shaila. It really should be a look. Asay l'charav, you have to have your own rav. You have a problem. You're living in a certain city. You live in a neighborhood. You don't have a rav. Well, I have Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. No, that's not. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is not your rav.
Let me push back a little bit to make an argument from the perspective of the Shluchim and Anash that obviously now that we're post Gimel Tammuz, post Chav Zayin Adar, where we don't have direct minus from the Rebbe and so on and so forth. So an argument l'chayr could be made that the Rabbonim have to take a more vocal, proactive position and kind of make their viewpoints heard versus kind of hearing from the Rebbe every week. In other words, I guess there's a bit of some have argued that with the kilu, you have to say this in the right way, the active begoli dika leadership role of the Rebbe being behester. So the Aseh L'Charav piece that the Rebbe set up, or system that Rebbe set up, maybe needs to be more upfront.
So
maybe, in other words, post Gimel Tammuz, or as we're getting 30 years into this Helen Vehester, an argument can be made that the Rabbonim should be more. I
agree with you 100%. The Rabbonim have to be more. So where does this guy live? Where is this Moisid? Let's
put it this way. There's about 70% of small Lubavitcher Kehillas don't have a Rav. That's A. B, 2,000-3,000 Shluchim are living in communities that don't have a Rav. So the Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, or Kilu, this central voice, I think an argument can be made that they should be more vocal in terms of leadership and positions.
To be a Rav, to be able to, I'm giving you now my personal opinion to this. You said Aseh L'Charav. Aseh L'Charav is that a Kehillah is supposed to take upon themselves a Rav. Now, if you have a Rav, if you're part of a Kehillah, you're mechuyev to listen to your Rav. In Caracas, they voted for these Rabbanim, so they're mechuyev to listen to these Rabbanim. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, the only time you're mechuyev to listen to something that is with the stationary Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is when you have it in Torah and they sign that a ksav beirus, then they're accepting upon themselves to take this opinion. They're mechuyev to do it. But what is mechayev somebody, a shliach, who knows where, and we tell him, you have to do this. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is an irgun of Rabbonim he doesn't have to listen to Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. He's going to say, I have a different Rav. I have a Rav. I asked him, he told me it's kosher. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch is not, doesn't have the authority and can't force upon him to do something, because and you have that. You have certain Rabbonim, between Rabonei Anash, that are more mekel, a lot of people call them. And it could be a lot of Rabonei Anash are not, do not necessarily agree with this specific Rav, who's noit to lahakal. There's a difference between lahakal and kal. So there's a difference between a mekel and a kal. But I'm not saying that either. But the question over here is, let Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch talk about tznius. Or Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch talk about this. There's yeshiva, there's schools, bisrivkas. The students are mechuyev to have a certain connection to them, or the seminaries, or the Rav of Kehillah. So you're a Rav in a Kehillah, you're the one that's supposed to speak out to that.
So what are those thousands or a couple thousand Anash that don't have a specific Rav Kehillah? Is there no room for a? I mean, in other communities, you do have the voice of.
So they do have everyone, every from Yid has someone who asks shilas, and it could be this guy is going to say, this Rav who is going to say, you don't have to listen to Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch, and he will say that because there's no chayvus. The Rebbe didn't appoint Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch to be the Rav HaKloli of Anash. It was not appointed for that purpose. So you can blame. It's an excuse to blame.
And what about for the 2,000-3,000 shluchim that are in locations that don't have a Rav?
If they're not doing something,
are they there to be
2,000 shluchim were doing that, and it's something inappropriate? Really, America's, and we sometimes point if something is brought to us, for example, let's say someone wrote to Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch that a shliach, let's say, is doing something that's inappropriate. We send that to America's. They're the boss. That person they're the boss of that shliach. So we're going to send that problem to America's. Now, is America's going to follow through? That's not our Indian. But for us to speak out, a shliach did this, or Seich made an event, and it was in this place, or shliach made this, that. Vuzen the Rabbonim. First of all, all the kvetchers, there's a lot of kvetchers.
I'm not kvetching. I'm just.
I'm answering you. If there's something wrong that's going on, it's the people who are. We're not the heads of Chabad. The heads of Chabad, if it's shluchim, it's merkaz. If it's kehillas, if it's in your kehillah, then you respond. If there's a shliach who doesn't have a rav, every shliach should have a rav. You have shilas, and shluchim. I think every shliach has his rav, but he has his shilas.
So to summarize, in Rabbi Winner's opinion, having a central rabbinical voice or consensus amongst Rabbonim, you don't think is usually productive. It would be very productive. It's a much more individualized type of situation, and it has to be. I don't
think the structure of Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch was structured that way. Tell me, which rabbinic organization has a power to give? They're giving these kol kairas, which some nudnik goes around to the rabbanim, some kanoi, and he's getting signatures. Half of them are fake. I mean,
like if today, for example, Satmar is broken up into two. But like, let's say you take the Aroinim. So there's a certain, if the Rebbe wants to make a certain takana, so they get the 20 top rabbanim in Satmar to,
So it's only mechayev. It's only mechayev that Aroinim.
It's mechayev, meaning it's so. Do you think it would make you said?
And it's only because he appointed them. It's because he appointed them.
Correct. I understand. It's not the Rebbe's directive for Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch.
I mean, we did listen. We did come. There were certain things we did come out, because we were asked to address it, like the call of the shofar, if you remember. So we were asked to address it with Tam Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. There were certain Yonim Klolim that we were asked to address, but to go, we're asked to address by people in the Kehillah or so on. But we're not the Rabbonim of the Kehillah.
So how do you decide which areas to address? I mean, there's every month another serious thing comes up.
Usually these serious things that come up are in Yonim that have to do with chinuch, should be the yeshivas. I mean, yeshivas or kehillas that's involved in that kehillah and so on. This is my view of that whole thing.
So
I'm giving a share soon.
Okay, so if you want to give some concluding thoughts to Anash, what would be your message to Anash and Shluchim from your rabbinical Rosh Yeshiva
my answer
background?
Is, first of all, the Rosh Yeshiva had, you have to learn Torah. The Rebbe Chabad is a Torah thing. The Rebbe emphasized that, but the Rebbe would spend hours saying Torah. He spent hours being Magia, Sichos, and Maimorim, and it's Chabad, and that's so to say the oil that feeds the lamp to give you chayas in doing. Just doing, Chassidus, it says, if shuv, ratzoi is feelings, which is fed by learning Torah. Shuv is ma'isa, so you need ratzoi v'shuv. And says Chassidus, if it's going to, even though the tachas hakavana is ma'isa, meaning the tachas hakavana is shuv, but if someone's going to be just ma'isa and he's not going to be learning, it's going to get stale, and he's going to become a goshim because he's not feeding his seichel and his midas and his neshama with Torah. You have to learn Torah. My father's a balabas, at least 2 hours of Torah. People today have ways of giving businessmen to give more than 2 hours a day of learning Torah because the life is easier. And
you think 2 hours is the minimum for everyone, or that was special for your father?
No, I heard that the Rebbe told us the other balabatim who were shaykh, who went to yeshiva in their youth. I heard that also the others, that the Rebbe said you have to learn 2 hours a day.
That's what you tell your family, 2 hours.
100%.
Okay.
100%. So first of all, you have to learn Torah. And Torah, limud Torah, the Rebbe says, Rambam. That alone could take over an hour and a half. But there has to be an union of limud Torah. So that's b'chlal, whether you're a balabas or you're a shliach, or your klei kodesh, or chul and altaras hakodesh. Now, benegeya to the other thing about Rabbonis, Rebbe kocht sich an aseh l'charav. You have to have aseh l'charav. You're talking about this issue. Don't wait for Rabbonim. You have to have a rav that you could consult, that you can guide you. I found, and other killers it's that way. You'll have a rav that you're close to. It's going to come a shidduch. He'll be able to advise you. He'll be able to put a good word in for you. No one is alone in an island. A person who lives alone in an island doesn't have a relationship with a rav or a klei kodesh that is close to him. You have a problem, and it's going to come back to haunt you. Your kid is kicked out of yeshiva. You have a rav that's close to you. He'll stick up you. There's a yanim of a shidduch. In life, there's always, you have to have a rav b'chlal, even as you did, as a person you're close to. And also a yid has to have a rav. He has a shaila. It could be in there shaila in halacha, pure halacha. You can have a shaila in what the Welt calls hashkafa shaila. To hear from a person who you can count on, you have has to be aseh l'charav. And the Rebbe was very liberal about it. He didn't appoint rabbonim. he wanted everyone to say L'chorav. Now,
Why do you think that was?
because you have to, like a shidduch, you want to the person has to choose his own shidduch. Taisa says because otherwise, Taisa says you shouldn't marry off your daughter without her wanting the shidduch. Halacha pitayra you could, but because it's not going to work, the person has to want. And Adar has a Rav. You can change your Rav. You can find another Rav. But you have to be serious about it. If it doesn't fit your fit, so then you find another Rav. But you have to have a Rav. Don't change your Rav every 10 minutes, but that's another discussion. But Negeya also, the Rebbe said by the Shiva that if people have shilas, by the Shiva, he said, which basically the Rebbe was sort of saying what's going to be in the future. And later on, we understood that after Gimel Tammuz, that you should ask 3 Chassidish Rabbanim. So there is such an union of asking 3 Chassidish Rabbanim. And there were different.
So if the person's not sure, he shouldn't just ask one Rav and follow. There has to be a. When do you decide?
The Rebbe spoke about this, not in halachic questions, about Rebbish questions. And I've been chosen as one of the 3 by different people who had, should they move from one country to another country? A question they would ask the Rebbe, or should they? Was a head of a meisid? Should they? They wanted to ask the Rebbe. Let's say they would ask the Rebbe if they should sell a property, or take more responsibility. A guy was heading a meisid. Should take more responsibility. So someone told him, this is a Rebbe question. So you ask 3 Rabonei and Nash. The Rebbe used it with Chassidish Rabbanim who learned Chassidus. So that was a Ra from the Rebbe. So if a person wants to do that, you answer also to your question. Vaad Rabbonei Lubavitch. You ask a question, a leading role. So it's a question the person has. And Chassidim do this every day. You've put together 3 Rabbanim who you trust, and you think they're Chassidish Rabbanim, and these, not separately, these 3 sit down together as 3 Rabbanim.
When the Rebbe said 3 Rabbanim, it meant...
It sounded like together. I mean, Al Kapanim, cases that I was involved, he put down the 3 Rabbanim, they were in a conference call, and he says, this is my question. The Rebbe says, Rabbanim, what do you think? I want to ask you, B'toiras, the Hira of the Rebbe. So these Rabbanim have to sit down and say the Rabbanim heard what the Rebbe said, and the Chassid heard what the Rebbe said. I have to go now.
Okay, appreciate
my
time.
number if you want to continue this.
Okay.
But I am on another Zoom, a shir klali that I give to Balabatim.
Okay. Rabbi Winner.
Stay in church. I want to thank you, Rebbe Tzalel, your Avodas HaKodesh, doing Gedulas V'niflois in Rabbonos and in Limud HaTorah, Habatzas HaTorah. I mean, you're a major Rosh Yeshiva today, and you're Habatzas HaTorah, and you're meisters that you're.
Well, I'm glad I have at least 3 Rabbanim that can guide me in my work, and your support is very, very grateful.
You can, you know a lot of Rabbanim, and you know how to put them together, and you know how to work Zoom also.
Thank you,
Zoom. Bye.
This podcast is sponsored by Koilol L'Loimdei Dach. Revolutionize your limud chassidus. Join over 200 shluchim and anash that are taking their limud chassidus to the next level. In Koilol L'Loimdei Dach, you have expert mashpiyim, Rabbi Asher Farkash, Rabbi Yosef Klein, Rabbi Yitzchak Coffin, numerous guest mashpiyim that learn chassidus in a unique way, broken up by sugyas. Every 2-3 months, we take a new sugya and we dissect it from its haskalah to its avodah, level by level. For bringing on the sugya, discussing the avodah aspects of the sugya, the practical application of the sugya. Schedule a conversation today. with the Menal Poil or Paltil, and learn Chassidus like you have never done before. This podcast is sponsored by Smichas Chaver Chabad, Halacha U and Women's Halacha Circle. In over 100 communities around the world, Halacha for everyone, Halacha curriculum that we provide for your community to teach the halachas, to engage people in halacha, to make halacha interesting. We have Smichas Chaver Chabad for Anash communities. For those that have a yeshiva background, we have Halacha U, which are advanced courses being taught in Chabad houses around the world. For those that don't have a yeshiva background but want serious, roll up your sleeve learning, super engaging, take them through the journey of the halacha down to the super, super practical. Every 6 months is a new topic. After Pesach, we are starting the sugya of workplace halachas, the laws of ribbis, the laws of baltolan, paying your workers on time, and the laws of yichud. Fascinating sugyas. We have it on various levels for those that have a yeshiva background, those that don't have a yeshiva background, for women as well. Check out scpchabad.org or halachayu.org. Click join to schedule a meeting with me to learn more.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed listening to our podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share to help bring it to more people, which brings Mashiach. And if you want coaching that actually shifts you, just reach out to me at leviholisticcoach@gmail.com. See you in the next video.